Alright, what's up everybody, Mr. Mira here, and today we are back with another Java video. We have worked with numbers and number data types already. Remember, the data types that deal with numbers are considered to be primitive data types, meaning that the value of the variable and the name of the variable exist in the same memory location. We briefly saw the ability to hold more than numbers in a variable when we worked with scanner. We saw a data type in there called string that allowed us to hold words. Now, strings can do more than only holding words, and they're actually known as a reference type. Before we jump into code today, though, let's look at what a reference type is. So I'm going to switch screens here, and we're going to pull up a whiteboard, and then we're going to draw out some reference type stuff on that whiteboard. After that, we'll come back, we'll be in code, and then we might switch back to the whiteboard a little later on here. Okay, so let's pretend that we have two sections on our whiteboard here. We will draw a line down here, and we'll have a section called memory, and then we'll have a section called code. And up in the code section, let's say that our code is something like string title, and then we'll give it a title of Moana. So what does that look like? I said strings are a reference type. What does that mean happens in memory? Well, in memory, we have a little box, we'll say, for our variable title. And if we were dealing with primitive types, we would know that in the same little box here in memory, the word Moana would be in there as well, but strings are a reference type. And what that means is actually this has a reference. So in here, maybe we see like CF, and this is memory location 7A. So inside there, we see CF, and CF is a reference to another memory location. And at CF, we actually then have our value of Moana. So that's what I mean by a reference type. So as a reference type, when we go to the memory location of the variable name, of the name of the object of the thing, what we actually find in there is we find a reference to another memory location, which actually holds us the value that we're looking for. So that's what reference types are as a brief overview. And we'll be diving more into reference types as we start talking about our own classes, making our own classes and things like that. But a little preview here since we're going to be dealing with strings. Let's jump back over to our actual code and actually start typing out some string stuff and talk more about what strings mean. I believe our class today is called Lost in Translation. Yep, that's the movie that we went with. So a string, in order to make a string, let's start there. How do we make a string object? So in order to make a string, we have our class name and we have our public static void main string array of args method typed out already. So we're going to be making string objects in here. In order to make this, we say the word string, the class name string. It's not a keyword, it's a class. We'll talk more about classes later, but we need to say that the class string has a capital S, and after we type out string, we now give our object a name. So we will go with string, let's do name for right now. Actually, no, let's keep it generic. Let's do word. And if we were to end it here, if we were to just put a semicolon right here, this would be considered an uninitialized string. What an uninitialized string means is that we cannot call any methods on the string. If I have an uninitialized string, it could become an issue. Strings can hold words, letters, symbols, paragraphs, numbers, as long as they're between quotation marks. Anything we want goes between quotation marks, which come after an assignment operator, the equal signs, and I have quotation marks like that. If I do not include anything between the quotation marks, if I just have open and close quotation mark immediately, this is known as an empty string. An empty string has a length of 0, but I can't actually call methods on it. It is initialized, just has a length of 0 when I do call certain methods on it. If I were to include just a space between the quotation marks, the string is then said to be blank. It has a length of 1. It is made up of a single character. That single character happens to be a blank space. So it is important to know the difference between uninitialized, empty, and blank strings as we begin our string series here, our videos on string, the couple that we're going to have are videos on strings as well. So if I wanted to combine a couple strings together. Let's say I wanted to combine a word of dog, and then I wanted to make a string, we'll just say like another word equals run. and then I wanted to combine both of these together, and I wanted to say like string phrase. I can combine them together with what is called the concatenation symbol. Now, when dealing with strings, the concatenation symbol is the plus sign. So this combines the strings together. So I could say string phrase is word plus another word. And then if I were to go print out system.out.println and I were to print out phrase, and I were to run this code, and we will move our screen, our print screen over to the side here on the right side, and I get dog run, no spaces or anything like that, because it is immediately the word dog followed by the word run. And there is no spacing here when I give my plus symbol. Now, if I wanted a space, I would put in a space like that. I could put in a space, and let's say that I also wanted like an exclamation point at the end there. I could run this, and now I would see dog space run exclamation point. Now, strings can also hold, I said letters, single letters, and it would be done the same way. They can also hold numbers. Now, notice if I do a plus and I do like the number 19, 19 changes to a different color here, indicating that it's not wrapped as a part of a string. This is an int. It's a number. It's recognized as a number here. But if I were to print this out, I get dog run exclamation point 19. And that's okay. But if I were to try to do like 14 plus 19, now I get an error, because string, it's telling me I have two numbers here. Why are you trying to store this into a string? So it says I've provided two ints. Why is this getting into a string? Now, in order to hold this into a string, one of my operands here must be a string, meaning I must wrap it between quotation marks. And when I do this, I can no longer do typical math. It's not going to add 14 and 19 together. It's going to combine them to be 14, 19. So there's a difference there. Whenever I'm dealing with strings, I lose my ability to do math operations on numbers that are being held or stored as strings. So that's an important thing to kind of keep in mind as we deal with strings here, as we start going into more and more in depth with strings. Now, strings are not only a reference type, they are also the string class is known to be an immutable class. And what that means is that once I create a string, once a string is created, it cannot change its value. It cannot change its length. That is all it is. And let's jump back over to the whiteboard here, because this is a little easier to show off on the whiteboard, and then we'll come back and we'll finish in IntelliJ and try to show it off in here as well. What's up, everybody? Editing Mr. Mirror here. We're actually going to stop the video at this point. It's going to run too long if I continue it. So the immutable part of strings, looking at immutability, what does that mean? How does that impact things? That is all actually going to be in the next video. This video will only focus on what we have seen up until this point, how strings work in memory, reference types, how we combine them together, and all that stuff. So until next time, everybody, have a week.